On October 28th, 29-year-old Adam Johnson, an American hockey player playing for the Nottingham Panthers in England, was killed on live TV when a player from the competing team lifted his skate into the neck of Mr. Johnson. Now, many have voiced their opinions concerning this tragedy as to whether or not this opposing player, Matt Petgrave, should be held accountable for causing Mr. Johnson's death. Well, let's talk about that. Hey, welcome back to Enough with the Crazy. So, as I mentioned, during the hockey game played on October 28th in England, opposing player, 31-year-old Matt Petgrave, lifted his foot high into the air, wherein the blade of his skate cut the throat of opposing player Adam Johnson as he was attempting to skate by. For the next week, many were voicing their opinions as to whether or not this was intentional or accidental. And according to all that I've read, there seemingly was a split opinion as to which of the two it was. Regardless, on Tuesday, November 14th, multiple outlets reported that a man had been arrested on manslaughter charges in connection with the death of Adam Johnson. The opposing player, Matt Petgrave, was not named as said man. However, as he was the one directly involved in the cause of death, it seems probable that he was the quote-unquote man arrested. So is he responsible for Adam Johnson's death? And more importantly, did he choose to conduct his play in such a way that would make him legally accountable for manslaughter? Well, I think there are points of evidence that I believe will be difficult for Mr. Petgrave to dispute in defending himself against his charge of manslaughter. As I discuss these points, I will tell you that although I will show certain stills of the incident, I will not show the video or anything else that will expose the graphic nature of this tragedy. So to begin, we first take a look into the background of Matt Petgrave's hockey career to see what type of player he is. To do that, we go to an article from sportsmanor.com dated November 5th, which writes the following. Matt Petgrave has received several suspensions for foul play throughout his career. According to a detailed report by Heavy.com, Petgrave has a shocking past in the sport. He has received a known suspension as far back as 2010. At the time, he was around 18 years of age. According to the Canadian Hockey League in 2010, Matt Petgrave will sit out the next 5 games for an infraction in the third period of last Saturday's 9-4 win over Sarnia. Now, to get a 5-game suspension means that you did something somewhat seriously. Petgrave played in the Ontario Hockey League from 2009 to 2013 for the Niagara Ice Dogs, Owen Sound Attack, and Oshawa Generals. He spent his next 4 seasons in U Sports with the University of New Brunswick. FredsHockey.com states that in 2013 through 2017, he was listed as having 328 career penalty minutes. In 2018, he played for Brampton Beast in the ECHL, or the East Coast Hockey League, an ice hockey league based in New Jersey. That year, the ECHL announced that Brampton's Matt Petgrave has been suspended indefinitely and fined an undisclosed amount as a result of his actions in ECHL game number 963, Brampton at Kalamazoo on April 7th. Now, to be suspended indefinitely and fined an undisclosed amount means that whatever he did, it was a serious offense. During that period, he played for Syracuse, Laval, Belleville, and Utica in the AHL, or the American Hockey League. He received several suspensions for various infringements during that time. So you see the continuation of that type of behavior. 3Ice, in their profile for Petgrave, has written that he was the EIHL's, or the Elite Ice Hockey League's, most penalized player while playing for the Sheffield Steelers. Eurohockey's page say that he had 129 penalty infraction minutes. Heavy.com states that Petgrave has received penalties in his career for acts such as tripping, holding, and spearing. So it's clear that Matt Petgrave has had an ongoing history of dirty play. In a video posted to X by the user Wall Street Silver, you can see that he has done this type of thing before, in which the opponent could have been hurt as a result of the severity of the fall he took because of Petgrave tripping him. Inside on he got wiped out by Petgrave. Now, when we stop the footage to see the actual trip, it is clearly visible that Petgrave extended his leg out as a means to interfere with the opposing player's progress, the result of which caused a very hard fall for the opposing player. Now, doing this in sports is nothing new, which is why all sports has a penalty system. Some incidents happen without a purposed intent to cheat, while others happen because a certain player is a dirty player. As an example, basketball players will extend their legs out to block a pass, which is not allowed. Football linemen will extend out their legs when they're fallen as a means to prevent their quarterback from getting sacked, both of which are penalties. These types of fouls, however, get smaller penalties because they are not considered severe. But when a player purposely commits a foul with what is considered unsportsmanlike and dangerous intent, the penalty is much greater and the offending player could even be ejected from the game. So when you take into consideration that someone is skating at a high speed on a hard surface such as ice, and someone intentionally extends out his leg to trip the opposing player, the potential for physical harm is exponentially increased. Not to mention how at the bottom of a hockey player's foot is a thin blade, a blade very capable of cutting someone badly. Now, although I am not a medical professional or a lawyer, this is just my observation and opinion. I am a person who has been trained in the martial arts, and so when I look at this incident, I tend to look at it within the physics of what I understand in body movement. You see, there are movements a body does that is the result of natural momentum. There are also movements that are clearly rooted in purposed intent. For example, if I accidentally stumbled and began to fall, the natural movement of my body would be to extend my arms downward in the direction of my fall to hopefully prevent myself from being hurt. To extend my arms in the opposite direction of my momentum would have to be a purposed intent, as that is a completely unnatural reaction in a fall. Hence, when I look at the photos of the incident, I can clearly see how Matt Petgrave's leg is lifted in the air, bent at the knee. I can see his head and body facing away from Adam Johnson, which means that the natural movement of his body would be to continue in the direction that he is facing. However, in the next second or two, you can see how his leg is extended against the direction of his body's natural movement, wherein his knee is unbent, revealing that there was a clear effort to extend his leg in the opposite direction. This, in my opinion, implies that there was purposed intent to create a means to hinder Adam Johnson's path. Now, don't get me wrong. There are fouls committed by everyone in sport. The point is that some fouls are committed just out of a momentary reaction in that particular moment, meaning that there was never any purposed malice in the player to use fouls as a means to win. It was just a reaction in that moment. But more serious types of fouls happen because certain players have made playing dirty an instinct that then dictates the method in which they play. This, in my opinion, could be the hardship for Matt Petgrave to deal with in any court action he may face for what I believe will be involuntary manslaughter charges. And this is why I think this. In the UK, involuntary manslaughter is legally defined as when someone is responsible for the death of another human being, yet there is no motive for the crime. Death is a complete accident and arises for one of two reasons: an unlawful and dangerous act, or gross negligence. Now, the understanding that raising your skate blade towards an opponent is already understood to be dangerous by all players in a hockey league. Hence, that issue of a quote-unquote unlawful and dangerous act becomes already established. But the idea of gross negligence becomes, in my opinion, the biggest issue for him. In the UK, gross negligence refers to a failure to exercise reasonable care and skill in performing or failing to perform an obligation, where such party demonstrates indifference to or a serious disregard for a reasonably foreseeable risk. Now, it's clear that someone like Matt Petgrave, who has received so many penalties for tripping, etc., reasonably knew that raising his skate that way would lead to a risk for Adam Johnson to have possibly gotten hurt from at least having had a fall because of his actions. According to Wilson Brown solicitors in England, they go on to say that it is essentially an extreme form of ordinary negligence and may have occurred when a person suffers injury or damages due to extreme carelessness or gross disregard for safety by another person. Clearly, in my opinion, there was a gross disregard for safety, as tripping another player is known to be illegal by everyone in the sport, as it has the potential to hurt someone. And look, in no way do I, or probably most others, think that Matt Petgrave intended to kill Adam Johnson. However, with this definition, I think the case can be made that extending his leg outward against the natural momentum of his body was a purposed intent to obstruct the path of Adam Johnson in a way that could both be described as dangerous and of gross negligence. The greatest issue concerning this tragedy, though, is that because of the possible act of an unsportsmanlike action, 29-year-old Adam Johnson, a man who was getting engaged to the woman he loved, a man who had a family and friends who loved him, tragically had his life taken in an incident that should have never happened. It was evident to the owners of the team and the league that Matt Petgrave had an established history of unsportsmanlike play. Yet they continued to allow him to play. And because of that, because they seemingly cared more about the potential of winning than they did about safe, fair play, it cost Adam Johnson his life. Hopefully, because of this tragedy, those sports organizations who are willing to continually have people who play dirty remain on the payroll just to possibly increase their chances to win games will learn from this and remove these types of players from the leagues so that the chances of unnecessary, completely avoidable injury, or in this tragic case, death, would be eliminated. So feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments as to whether or not you believe Matt Petgrave should be held accountable for Adam Johnson's death. And if you enjoy this type of content, would you take a moment to share it with others, as that would be a great benefit to me? Also, would you consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel, as that would be an immense help to me in growing the channel. Hey, as always, I would just like to say God bless you, and thanks so much for taking the time to listen. Until next time.